Hey everybody, welcome back to Trials to Triumph. This is Pastor Brad Closter from the Rock Church in Bel Air, Michigan. Thank you for joining me tonight. I'm glad that you're here, glad that you have taken time out of your day, out of your busy schedule, whatever it is that you're doing, to join me tonight. And so I appreciate that, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook. I always love it when you leave me a comment or something to let me know that you're watching, and I hope this is a blessing to you. We have been talking about the commandments of Jesus. Jesus directly commanded multiple things during his time on earth, and most of which obviously show up in the Gospels because that was a record of his time. And so what we're doing is we're just walking through sequence of the direct commands of Jesus. And so we are in Matthew chapter 5, as we have been for a little while, but we're continuing to work through these commands and talk about each one of them, because Jesus also said in the book of John, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. And so I think as Christians, as believers, and those who follow Jesus, it's very fair that we know, number one, we know what the commandments of Jesus are, and number two, that we're following them. So we want to be sure that we take a good look, find out what the commandments are that Jesus gave us, and then follow them to the very best of our ability. Now, in no way, shape, or form do I think that any of us have arrived or become perfect, but this sure helps us prioritize some things that we might need to get squared away in our own lives. So let's take a look. This is number 7 on our list so far, and so we're going to continue working down this list and see how far we get. So Matthew chapter 5, and I'm going to read for you verses 28 through 30. And so we'll go ahead and get that. Matthew 5, 28 through 30. And these are the words of Jesus. This is what he had to say. But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and cast it from you, for it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. And if your right hand caused you to sin, cut it off and cast it from you, for it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than your whole body to be cast into hell. So these commands, we could say we're lumping them together, where he actually commanded, saying, if your right eye caused you to sin, or if your hand caused you to sin, or whatever, to cast it off. But the command here, according to Jesus, has to do with lust, and it's a very simple command: do not lust. And this is an area that, especially you and I living in the days that we live in, we have to deal with, because the Bible talks about in 1 John that all that's in the world, it categorizes all of our sin into 3 categories: the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. And so 2 of those 3 categories have to do with lust, and it basically having to do with what you want. And that's where lust gets tricky, is because it has to do with something that you like or having to do with something that you want. And so we certainly have preferences for a reason. We are a human, and that human brings with us a human soul that has desires and preferences and all of those things. But what we must be careful about is that what our desires, our wants, or whatever, become lusts, and it becomes something that we are uncontrolled with. And it becomes something that we can't stop, and it becomes something that takes over our life and our thinking, and it becomes lust in and of itself, by definition, is more of an uncontrolled type of desire, where it's not about you having the desire for whatever it is, but it's about the fact that control, that you've lost that. You've lost that control. And I would ask you this, as you examine yourself and examine your own life and your own lust, and I would ask myself the same question, is why do we have that desire? Because there are desires that are put in us by God, and there are desires that are put in us very appropriately by the hand of God. But then there are other things in our life that come along that the Bible would refer to those as temptations. And my question as humans and how we have to examine ourselves, and if we want to go from a trial to a triumph, we have to examine ourselves and say, why is this something that I want? Why is it something that's such a temptation for me? And you get on your face before God, and I get on my face before God, and we figure out how to remedy that, and we figure out, how can God deliver me from this lust? How can God deliver me from this temptation? You know, the Bible also says in the book of James that when we're tempted, that first of all, when we're tempted, that when the desire itself causes the temptation, but when it gets full grown, it becomes sin. And sin brings forth death. And so one thing to remind ourselves is that any sort of lust, any sort of temptation, any sort of sin that wants to get a hold of your life, the end result is it wants to bring death. And so if you can keep that in mind, that really can help you navigate through those temptations, navigate through those lusts, and find your way on the other side, because you and I, we'd be silly to invite death to our door, but yet that's exactly what happens any and every time we allow lust to take over in our heart. So this is a tough one, because we probably all deal with lust on some level, wanting something in maybe an uncontrolled way, or losing control of your own senses sometimes, just when I want that thing and I want it now. And it can be with your money, it can be with people, there's so many things lust can be about. And I just pray that we would use these verses, this command of Jesus, put it in perspective and say, no lust, no temptation, no sin is worth it. We'd rather go, like Jesus said, we'd rather go to heaven without a hand than go to hell in our whole body. So, hey, I know that's a heavy one tonight, but take that, examine yourself, and may you fix that and turn your trial into a triumph. Thanks for joining me tonight. We'll see you next week on Trials to Triumph.